Shabbat shalom. Said the Cantor Klieger, "Oh, I wish for a political crisis every week so we could fill the sanctuary." I'm usually the rabbi that has his sermons done really far in advance. Rarely do I ever finish a holiday sermon within 2 weeks. Usually 2 weeks is my mark. So I'm a slow thinker and I need time to process. And of course, didn't have that luxury this week. And I know, because I've heard from so many of you, that you're coming here looking for just the right word, just the right set of words. And you know how hard that is for this moment, because for some people this has been an incredibly difficult week, and for other people it's been a week of joy and celebration. So makes this moment a difficult moment if you're me. So I have thoughts. It's not precisely as organized as I would like. But I began by really trying to think how I could contextualize this. And I want to go back to 1975. Now, 1975 in many ways was it was the fulcrum upon which the 60s tipped over to the 70s. The Vietnam War had ended with the fall of Saigon in April, just 4 months before Bruce Springsteen's Thunder Road was released. And we were still digging out from the shadow of Watergate. And interestingly, 1975 was the year a very small company was founded in Albuquerque by two nerds named Bill Gates and Paul Allen. 75 was a harbinger of much change. Unemployment was high, 9%, and was fueled by the lingering effects of the oil crisis of 1973. The economy was changing, and not for the better. And in this milieu, in the autumn of 1975, Ronald Reagan announced his bid to be the Republican nominee for president. So it's no small irony then that Thunder Road, the opening song on the Born to Run album, is an anthem of optimism. And the opening lyrics, "Screen door slams, Mary's dress waves, like a vision she dances across the porch as the radio plays. Roy Orbison singing for the lonely, hey, that's me, and I want you only." That lyric right there, that lyric paints a picture of the America we love, of the America we want to love. But it's deliberately a reference, and we know this because of Roy Orbison, it's deliberately a reference to the late 50s and the early 60s when Roy Orbison was singing. So here's Bruce Springsteen in 1975 writing this song, pining for an America of the late 1950s and 1960s. Springsteen is optimistic about an America that even in 1975 existed mostly in his memory. And the last line of Thunder Road, that gives its song its power. How many people know the last line of that song? It's a town full of losers, and I'm pulling out of here to win. This is the cri de coeur of every teenager and young adult. Hey, I want something better than my parents have. Right? Do you have teenage kids? I got to get out of here because I'm going to go out and I'm going to be successful. I'm going to go out and do something and change the world. I got to get out of here. And in fact, Isn't this what we want for our children? For them to be more successful than we are? That's what it's about. It's a town full of losers, and I'm pulling out of here to win. He's not saying really we're losers. He's saying, hey, you, my girlfriend, we're going to go, and we're going to do better than our parents. Certainly what we want as Jews. But in 75, Springsteen saw a world in which that possibility that the kids would do better than their parents was slipping away. Now, merely 9 years later, 1984 was an entirely different world. In January of 1984, the first Macintosh computer was introduced to the world. That guy who announced his candidacy for the Republican nomination in the autumn of 1975, that actor, he was running for his second term as President of the United States. But also at that time, just a little bit before, Ronald Reagan faced the tragedy of the Marine Corps barracks bombing, which we know killed almost 300 people, including 241 Marines. And a very small, unknown terrorist organization called the Islamic Jihad took responsibility for it. We know from the point of view of hindsight that ultimately Iran was responsible. So by 84, Springsteen began to paint in darker colors. Born in the USA is not a feel-good anthem about America. In fact, Bruce rebuffed overtures from the Reagan administration to use the song at their rallies during his campaign. George Will, you know George Will. George Will went to a Bruce concert and he heard the song Born in the USA, and I remember this vividly. He wrote a column called A Yankee Doodle Springsteen, and he described the song Born in the USA as a cheerful anthem, but the song is actually an indictment of America's treatment of Vietnam vets after the war. Now, one of the most successful singles from the album was Dancing in the Dark, and it's a song about loneliness. I get up in the evening, I got nothing to say, I come from work in the morning, and I go to bed feeling the same way. I ain't nothing but tired, man, I'm just tired and bored with myself. This is an America quite different than Thunder Road. There isn't much optimism in Dancing in the Dark, and the protagonist is searching for some connection to something, even if it's just fleeting, even if he's just a gun for hire. 2 decades later, in 2006, Springsteen released his 15th studio album, Magic. And Magic was a coda to The Rising, which he had released in response to the events of 9/11. Now, Bruce Springsteen didn't support the war in Afghanistan or the war in Iraq, but Magic was an indictment of those wars and of the society America had become. And in fact, several radio stations refused to play songs from the album. And of those songs, The Long Walk Home, a haunting song, is about a guy who returns to his hometown, and he doesn't recognize it or the people in it because of the America that's become. So those are 3 Springsteen songs that I start with. Why? Well, this past Monday night, Bruce Springsteen played at a rally in support of Hillary Clinton on Independence Mall in Philadelphia. And at that rally, he played 3 acoustic versions of those 3 songs. And while I was listening to it, I tried to figure out why. Thunder Road was kind of a gimme. It's a famous song. But Bruce Springsteen, if you know anything about him, he doesn't do anything just by accident. Whatever he chooses, he chose for a reason. And even after the night, dancing in it didn't seem to really make sense to me. With the benefit of hindsight, on Wednesday morning, those 3 songs and Bruce Springsteen made sense to me. You see, because the characters who inhabit those songs, Thunder Road and Dancing in the Dark and The Long Walk Home, those are the people, in most cases, who gave Donald Trump his victory on Tuesday evening. And in fact, in a cruel twist of irony for Bruce Springsteen, the very people Bruce Springsteen has been singing about and singing to for 40 years are the people who gave Donald Trump his victory. And I imagine Bruce has probably figured that out already. And I imagine it's a source of angst. I went to Bruce Springsteen's site, been going to it. He hasn't released a word about that I've seen about the results. These people are people we call working class, and they're a large part of the story of President-elect Trump. And these are the people who, in many respects, are the people upon whose backs this country is built, and these are the people who feel that the American dream is passing them by. And the people of Michigan, of Western Pennsylvania, and of Ohio, the workers on the assembly lines, in the coal mines, the factories, almost all of them were lifelong Democrats. And in fact, many of them came from families that first cast their vote for Franklin Roosevelt. Same group of people, in many respects, cast their first Republican vote for Ronald Reagan. The hardworking, decent, and fundamentally good people I'm describing, oddly enough, they don't really feel betrayed in the first instance by the Democratic Party. And I have to say to any of you who are in the Republican Party, they don't feel any real allegiance to the Republican Party either. You see, the working class feels betrayed by America itself. The working class agrees with Donald Trump that the system is rigged against them. Any grievance or affection they have for any party is secondary to their overall feeling of helplessness and abandonment. Democrats have certainly failed them. And they've been equally betrayed, in my opinion, by Republicans. I don't believe they voted for Donald Trump because he's a Republican. I believe they voted for him because he's the closest thing there was to neither a Republican or a Democrat. One thing we should learn about this election is that there are groups in this country, the working class among them, that has a legitimate set of grievances that's been ignored for at least a generation. But the problem is there are other groups in this country who also have legitimate grievances that have also been ignored for at least a generation. African Americans are another group. They feel America has passed them by. They believe the system is rigged against them. They believe, true, with facts to back them up, that black men are incarcerated at a much higher rate than the rest of the population and are, in fact, the victims of police shootings at a much higher rate than the rest of the population. And they don't feel that the Republicans or the Democrats have really addressed their grievances. And the worst part of it is this. Black America dismisses completely the grievances of the working class. And the working class dismisses completely the grievances of black America. And for the specific group of people I'm talking about, this isn't really about racism or prejudice. It's a matter of survival. Black America and working class America and rural America don't really associate with each other or talk to each other. Ever since I've been old enough to understand, I've been hearing that this is the moment for a national conversation about race. After Martin Luther King was assassinated, after Rodney King, after each police shooting, we're going to hear that the conversation about race is going to take place. But you know what? It's only a conversation between people that agree with each other. And that's not that helpful. If Republicans and Democrats really had the best interest of the country at heart, each would look hard at what this election means. Maybe they'd consider getting together behind closed doors, but in my view, this election was an indictment of both parties. That a Republican won, in my view, says really nothing about the Republican Party because Donald Trump really isn't a Republican in any meaningful way. And if Democrats think they lost this election because they had a bad candidate, well, they'd be wrong. In my view, both parties lost this election because both parties offer ideas that are utterly out of touch with rural America or urban America or working class America, and Donald Trump, to his credit, recognized that. He created a brand of populism that transcends party. He picked the Republican Party as his vehicle, but you know what? Donald Trump had more in common with Bernie Sanders than with Paul Ryan. So the first issue is that nobody's talking to each other. Nobody's acknowledging their grievances. They're talking past each other, and they're talking only to people they agree with. But I want to talk about something else. And if there's anything in this election that bothers me most, it is this. This, what I'm about to say, is for me the most painful part of this election. Candidate Trump's campaign was built in large part on misogyny, xenophobia, racism, and anti-Semitism. And this isn't a matter of opinion. This is a matter of fact. In October, just a few weeks ago, the ADL released a study of Twitter conducted between the summer of 2015 and the summer of 2016, and they identified 2.6 million anti-Semitic tweets connected to the presidential campaign, more than two-thirds of which were sent by only 1,600 accounts. And of those, according to this study, says the ADL, the clear majority self-identified as supporters of candidate Trump. There's no question in my mind that there's a large cohort of candidate Trump's supporters who voted for him because their perception, rightly or wrongly, is that his candidacy somehow countenanced their noxious beliefs. I can understand racists, and I can understand xenophobes. I can understand misogynists. But there's also no question in my mind that a far greater number of people who voted for him chose to ignore this in the hope that he didn't mean it or that he was the political equivalent of a shock jock. And this includes Jews. The many, many stressful things in this campaign, this one thing is, for me, the most difficult to absorb because there are people that I love and respect who ignored this anti-Semitism and cast their vote. And I need to do better to understand why that was the case and how that happened and what that means for me. And to be fair, I deserve your rebuke because I did not call this out in advance because I was so sure Trump wasn't going to win that I felt it better to leave it be. And that's embarrassing for me. I will never make that mistake again. But let me say this to those in that group I described who said, well, I'm going to just not pay attention to that. You have a unique obligation to call out this behavior should it manifest itself in his presidency. I will not accept a country governed by bigotry and hate, and I will speak out against it at every turn and when necessary from the bema. I cannot abide a single child feeling unsafe in this country because of the color of their skin, the love of their life, or that they were born a woman. And I will never again fail to call out anti-Semitism. This is non-negotiable. Now, I have no tolerance for those protesters who are claiming that President-elect Trump isn't their president. Imagine if the election had gone the other way, and his supporters were saying the same thing about Hillary Clinton. Those of us who supported Hillary Clinton, we wouldn't stand for it. I have no tolerance for those who are moving to another country, if in fact they ever do, but my words to you are great goodbye. If this is who you are when it gets tough, we don't need you. President-elect Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States. He will be my president. As such, I will offer my support when it is appropriate, and I will offer my criticism when I feel appropriate. I don't know what it means to say the United States is the greatest country on the earth. I don't know what it means to say that we should make America great again. I do know for Jews, the United States has been the land of milk and honey. I do know that the United States has been the only country in the world, including Israel, in which every Jew is free to live out their own expression of Judaism. I do know that in the United States, Jews have been able to achieve unimaginable success, safety, security, and happiness. I want every American to have the Jewish experience in America. That's my America. I want every American in this country to feel the same success my people have felt. I want every American to know that, yes, your children can be better off than you. I want every American to feel that any job or any occupation or any school or any office is open to you. Whoever you voted for Tuesday, whoever it was, I hope you've learned that wanting America to be great is different than working for it to be great. The American dream isn't easy, it's messy. You've got to go out and you've got to get it, you've got to do the hard miles. You've got to be able to hear the hard truth of the other side with an open heart. And you can't think that the person who voted the other way, whether it's someone who voted for Donald Trump or someone who voted for Hillary Clinton, you can't think that they're crazy or they're nuts or they're bigoted or they're entitled or they're elitist. We'll never get anywhere if that's what you're going to think. If you believe Tuesday's election gave you the right to create a country only for you because you're on the winning side, you're wrong. And to those of you who are crestfallen Tuesday night, your job is not to flee America, your job is to embrace America. Join with President-elect Trump to find common ground when you can, oppose him when you can't. And I promise you, and more importantly, I promise myself and my family and my children, that I will never again let you down by failing to speak out because I've embarrassed myself. The Long Walk Home, Springsteen's final song on Monday night, ends on a very, very hopeful note. And I hope this is your hope that you take away from my remarks. My father said, "Son, we're lucky in this town. It's a beautiful place to be born. It just wraps its arms around you, and nobody crowds you, and nobody goes it alone. Your flag flying over the courthouse means certain things are set in stone. Who we are, what we'll do, and what we won't. It's going to be a long walk home. But if we don't go it alone, we can get there." Amen.